Moin, moin aus Hamburg, wie man hier so sagt. Für mich als Schwabe gar nicht so einfach, aber ja, wir sind in Hamburg, wir sind bei Signify, ehemals Philips Lighting hier im Deutschland Headquarter und freuen uns sehr, dass wir den zweiten Tag begehen unserer 6. Ausgabe der Greentech.LIVE Konferenz. Wir haben uns viele Gäste eingeladen, volles Programm, stressig, aber sehr, sehr schön und sehr inspirierend. Wir hatten gestern über 15 Vorträge schon. Heute sind wir nochmal mit genauso vielen Leuten am Start. Wir freuen uns sehr, dass wir Gäste haben von nah und fern und dass wir aktuell nach Karlsruhe schalten zum KIT, zu Somid Saha. Und wir lernen von Somid unter anderem, warum Stadtbäume so wichtig sind fürs Klima. Hier in Hamburg ist auch wahnsinnig viel Beton. Ja. Berti, du bist auch zugeschaltet, unser Online-Experte. Berti, guten Morgen, wie ist Hannover?
Guten Morgen nach Hamburg und guten Morning to Karlsruhe. Bisschen regnerisch in Hannover, wie man sich das so vom norddeutschen Wetter erwartet. Man wird also nicht enttäuscht.
So Somid, let's switch to English. Good morning. You are connecting from Karlsruhe.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, sure.
How's the weather in Karlsruhe?
It's cloudy and not raining, but in the morning it was raining and the sun is popping up now.
Yeah. So Somid, you brought something in regards to city trees and their impact on climate in inner cities. So
Yes.
we are very eager to hear what's the latest in your studies and your work. I have one small thing I wanna ask you. Would you move yourself a little bit further to your right so we get a better framing on the picture? Do you see our screen? Yeah, this is quite perfect. Okay, Somid, super.
Okay.
And we're connecting through Constanze. Please send out best
Yes.
regards.
Yeah, thank you.
We had a great event last week in Karlsruhe, Gaia, at the Stadtkirche. So this
Yeah.
was a blast.
Yeah.
Somid, you brought a brief presentation and then we'll have some time for Q&A?
Yes.
Okay.
And should I share my screen now?
Yes, please.
Hey. Do you see my screen now in full screen mode?
I don't see it yet. Yes, here we go. Somid, this is your stage and let's spare like something like 10 minutes for Q&A later on, please, okay?
Okay. Yeah,
Thank you.
I'd like to finish it soon. I mean, I hope I finish on time. The presentation is a bit lengthy. So welcome and thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. As you see in my title, the ecological and social importance of large trees in the concrete jungle of a warming German city. So let's start. The global change impacts in Germany. I think all of you know that our cities are getting warmer and warmer. But in our part in Southwest Germany, in Karlsruhe, we have a double trouble of urbanization. So this area is also getting urbanized, as I depicted in the right of the picture of the screen. And we see more frequent heat wave and intense drought and extreme rainfall events. One example of heat wave very, very recently in August, we have a searing heat wave lasting 7 consecutive days. So the color in violet and the intensity of the violet color means the heat wave situation. Temperature was maximum above 5 degree normal, and sometime it was above 30 degrees Celsius. So when it comes to the trees and urban and forest, so this is a beautiful picture. I really like it. You see in the center, the castle of Karlsruhe, just in front of that, you see the German Supreme Court, which is located here. And this picture also beautifully tells you the trees in the city. So we have a city where you can find trees near the street or at the park, at the plaza, or even in the left-hand corner, you see in the forest. So therefore, we call it urban and peri-urban forests in a very, very different habitat type. And I think that's quite common in many other cities in Germany. However, our forests, as I say, they are kind of a very, very critical infrastructure. So after the COVID, there is a high increase of kind of demand from the urban forest. So United Nations and World Health Organization kind of regarded urban forest as a critical infrastructure. And however, the climate change and high urbanization increase the risk as well as demand of urban green space that we have also found in our studies in the past. Nevertheless, there is a sad part of the story also that trees are dying in a very high rate in Germany. If you know the German government report, you will see that there is a very, very high death rate, and around 60 to 70% trees are unhealthy. And also in our region, we have very high death rates of trees. And we also found in our research project in the past that tolerance to drought or tolerance to environmental stress vary not only between species, also within the species in different contrasting habitat. And that is something very, very important when it comes to planning. But when tree dies in the city, that can have a high negative impact on personal well-being or human well-being. I give a picture here, a hazel tree which was dying in an old age home or a nursing home near Karlsruhe, a date spruce tree in a backyard garden. And if you have a kind of area like Europaplatz in Karlsruhe where you have no tree at all, and even if there is a one tree standing and dying, then it can have a very, very high negative impact on personal well-being. So aim of the talk today is that I will talk about cooling function of city trees, trees as a habitat, the biodiversity value for flora and fauna, and tree and human well-being in general in the city. So three completely different topics and switch between the topic. So to kind of measure the cooling function of a tree, we used a vehicle which is owned by the German Weather Service or Deutsche Wetterdienst. And this vehicle is a kind of moving weather station. It measured the temperature at the air while it moves throughout the city in a slow 30 kilometers per hour. They measure surface temperature, global radiation, and we did it in the heat wave condition. And what is a heat wave condition? So clear sky, 30 degrees Celsius temperature or more, and wind velocity 3 meters per second or less. Yeah. And we did these measurements in 2019 and 2020. And this is one of our route. You see here the center of the Karlsruhe, and then we are going to the east, and that's a kind of gradient to the peri-urban area. And in the north of the picture, you see a very blue, that's the forest area. And what you see here is a relative air temperature, which is a normalized temperature. In the night, say 10 p.m. to early morning 4 o'clock. So you can still see the inner part of the city is really hot. And you can see that in the eastern part, it's which is more peri-urban area, it's a bit cooler. But why? This is the reason is because of the one major reason is how the green space is distributed along the route. So, for example, we could really map amount of green area and amount of green crown in this route, and that kind of allowed us to show that as the percentage of green cover increases, as a tree cover density I wrote in the x-axis, and in the y-axis air temperature significantly decline. So for example, if you have 20% or 10% tree cover, and in comparison to 40% tree cover in your neighborhood, you can have 5 degrees Celsius nearly temperature reduction in the red line. That is the night temperature when people actually sleep. That's a very important. So the take-home message is more trees really help to get down the temperature even during the heat wave. So now switching to the another topic that I promised is that habitat trees. So the tree as a habitat, the biodiversity function. Before I go to that, I want to explain you what is a microhabitat or microhabitat. It's a very, very specific word for ecology. So when you find a large tree in the city, you will see that there are a lot of small structure in the city, like cavities, holes, exudates, nest and so on. So we crazy ecologists try to quantify that. We kind of classify them to 7 form, 15 group, and 47 types. And these habitat structures are important because they are sometimes used by the animals. And we have found that if you have very, very large trees, for example, they really increase the number of microhabitats. So here I give you some examples of microhabitat in the picture. For example, we found there can be 3-fold increase of microhabitat or microhabitat in the tree if you have a 40 centimeter diameter oak tree, so a bit larger, compared to an oak tree which is 20 centimeter diameter at breast height, for example. And that's just to give you an example that how much size of a tree can influence the biodiversity provision. We are interested with a student, Monica Laus, to compare. You know, in Germany, there's a lots of discussion all over the world, not only in Germany, whether we should have kind of more exotic trees or more native trees. And we try to kind of compare the biodiversity values of a native oak trees, pedunculate oak versus exotic trees, road acacia or red oak. And we kind of put a sensors on the trees and to know which kind of bats are visiting those trees and whether origin of trees has anything to do with the bats frequency or in the city. We are very surprised that Karlsruhe, also in the very, very dense part of the city, we still have 9 species of bat in Karlsruhe, and they are coming from 3 genera. And some of the bats are kind of prefer, particularly the brown long-eared bats, which you see in the middle, they preferred native oak trees and they preferred structure of microhabitat like split trees with damage in the tree and with woodpecker holes, because they are the bats who eats insects and landing on the tree and looking for specific insects growing on those microhabitat. But 2 other genera, Pipistrellus bat and noctule bats, that did not matter. So the take-home message is origin of species. So for example, native or exotic does matter. And it particularly matters when it comes to some specific animals which are depending on them. For example, in this case, brown long-eared bats. So then we had a crazy question again, you know, again with this exotic and nativeness. This research is ongoing. It's a cooperation between Yale School of Environment, Yale University, New Haven, Connecticut, USA, and our university. And we kind of wanted to make a across the pond, so across the Atlantic experiment, and try to see who basically lives or a visited tree, you know. So we are kind of fascinating to know ecosystems like ocean, faraway land, Amazon, which are very, very attractive. But what about a tree that grows in front of your house and who lives there? Yeah. So what we did a crazy thing. We actually use a similar principle. For example, swab, like we do a COVID test. We actually use a swab to make a sample of swabbing the bark of a tree. Then we take a kind of leaves out of the tree and also the soil just near to the tree. And then we did a technology called meta barcoding. So if somehow, you know, there are always a DNA which is left in the DNA which are left in the sample, and you could use primer to identify which animals they are. That's a fascinating technique, isn't it? So we are very surprised that in Karlsruhe, we have 280 species of vertebrates and invertebrates that were visiting only 12 trees in Karlsruhe, and then 147, another 12 trees they were visiting in New Haven. In total, 390 vertebrates and invertebrates we found. By the way, I forgot to mention that we have 2 tree species as a comparison, Acer platanoides or maple trees or of Deutsch Feldahorn, and Quercus rubra, which is red oak or road acacia. And Acer platanoides is a native tree to Germany. However, it's a problematic and invasive species in northeastern USA. On the other hand, Quercus rubra is an exotic species in Germany, origin in USA, but it is becoming problematic in some areas in Germany. So it's exotic, but it tends to become invasive in some cases. And we just want to see what happens in their native environment and their non-native environment when it's come to association. And what you clearly see here in these graphics is that there is a community separation of different animals based on the country. So Germany and USA, same species, but different country has different animals which are visiting them. And that makes a lot of sense. For example, why a tree become invasive. Yeah. So that is something that we would like to do more research in the future. So that was it up to this point. I would like to bring you to trees and human health and well-being. Salutogenesis versus pathogenesis concept. I think we all know about pathogen, like COVID-19 was a virus that was killing us. But what about salutogens? There is also some sort of inner coherence of human mind and resistance in human body to fight, a motivation to survive. So it's a kind of concept that antagonistic to pathogenesis. So, and therefore I put it here, it's a kind of death versus total health concept. And why I'm talking about it? Because trees in the city, they can act as a salutogen. They can act as a visual cue, like green space when you see. They can act as olfactory cues, auditory cues, like bird song, good smell, sensory cues. And we have found that people who have access to gardens and trees during the COVID-19, they were less stressed because of during the lockdown. And maybe that could be one reason. And we have also found with our colleagues from University Heidelberg and KIT that when humans are exposed to green space, their brain function basically change, and some part of the brain there is less stress and less emotion processing time, which means that there is less cortisol in the blood. So overall, what I want to say is that having more trees has a clear medical benefit also when it's come to brain function and mental well-being. We ask people in the culture about subjective well-being, like we ask people in culture like where they visit and how they feel, and after the visit, they could rank the area based on the different part of the city, and we kind of then match it with the diversity map of tree species in culture. And why we did that? Because we wanted to check, for example, this is a relationship between different factors of biodiversity and subjective well-being, so human well-being. So the computed biodiversity is the biodiversity that we computed at the tree general level at the city, and then correlate that with the perception of tree species diversity. For example, perception by a human who is visiting a particular area, we asked how is the biodiversity in that area and what is their knowledge about biodiversity. And we found that perception of tree species diversity had a direct relationship on the subjective well-being or selection of a location where people visit. And we also found that age and size of a tree, it means when tree is a bit older and when tree is bigger, and the general diversity of an area, general species diversity of an area had a positive impact on subjective well-being. On the other hand, unkemptness or messiness, if an urban green space is not properly cared or properly managed, and that has a negative impact on subjective well-being. So the take-home message is that retain and preserve large trees as long as possible, very clear. More trees in the city, for example, we should have more trees in the city. At least 3 large trees from each apartment should be visible, 30% of area under green in each neighborhood, and a park within 300 meters from somebody's apartment. So-called 3 Cecil Koniendick van den Bosch. And there shall be more research is needed to link biodiversity and microhabitat, for example, what I talked about, to ecosystem function. There's lots of research gaps still. And urban ecology and urban planning is very complex discipline. Stakeholders, citizen, researcher need to work together. And this is the presentation result from Grüne Lunge project, Future Biocity project, and also funding from KIT. I gave you here also more information about our ongoing activities, what we are doing. And now I would like to provocate yourself a little bit how our city should look like. So this is how my office, at the front of my office, looked like today. Very, very gray, only one magnolia tree growing in a private place, and a lot of car, and that's the inner part of the city. What about if we remove the car from this area of the inner part of the city and completely redesign it to an area where you have more biodiversity, more structure, more green space, more canopy area, and that has a lot of positive effect. And this is an area, a kind of Platz or plaza, you call it, in Germany, in near Europaplatz. And this is very gray at the moment, and underground there is also a parking lot. But if we can change it to an area where we have trees, like a kind of shorter height trees, and also maintaining the function of the plaza, it means people still meet and shops are still there for daily market and so on. That can be wonderful, isn't it? And this is one of the park in Karlsruhe city, Otto Dulenkopf Park. It's heavily mowed, only one tree. And I have no idea why this park is managed like that way. There are many explanations, of course, from the authorities. But what about if if we convert this area to more green space, more diversity of small plants, birds, insects, also planting large trees, and keep one area of the park untouched, like having more like a Kleinwald or Miyawaki's forest. So with that kind of provocative ideas for future, I would like to thank you very much for your attention.
We thank you so much for your time. Huh? So, Bertie, I haven't introduced you earlier on. Please do that for me now, because I was impolite. Go ahead, please.
Oh, no problem, Jochen, no problem.
You need to know Bertie. He's the guy that knows all those things about technology and smart stuff.
Wow.
Thank you. I'm trying. Somid, I'm a journalist specialized in smart home technology that involves also garden technology, for instance, lawn mowing robots. So there's the connection to green spaces. Thank you very much for your presentation. Very insightful. Also impressive that you could prove that living near large trees could help improve your health. Mm-hmm. I was wondering if you did, or if you are planning to do comparative studies that involves also smaller plants and other green spaces. Mm-hmm. If there is a difference in benefits for being healthier, if there's a difference between living near trees and other green spaces.
Yeah, I think there is a benefit, and also there are some disservice. So, for example, when children grow in an area with small plants, mm-hmm. and they have a regular access to grass or area or park area or herbs and shrubs, they develop first of two positive things. The first positive thing they develop is a sustainable education. They know the nature, so they know which plant is which mm-hmm. species. That is the first thing. And second thing, they become immune to some allergy. We have a huge allergy crisis at the moment. And one reason why we have so much allergy, which is mostly in the city, by the way, because people living in the city, they don't have direct touch or connection with the small plants, so there is direct benefit for that, for sure. And one is that your health basically improve, not deteriorate. And I know there are also trees and some plants which are super allergenic to people. I did not talk about that in this presentation. We call it ecosystem disservice. So we try to basically also know which plant are allergenic and which plant are not allergenic. So there are databases for that. But yeah, small plants are super interesting. And we have a project at the moment where we are actually looking to them. We are kind of looking to them that what is the interaction with people, with the small plants, and soil management, urban soil management. When you touch a soil, when you work with the soil, what kind of relationship you develop while you are working. And another benefit is social cohesion. If you have a neighbor or a friend you do together, then you meet new people. Then you're not isolated living alone in an apartment, right? And that is something super important also.
Okay, well, that's very fascinating, very interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas when it comes to stakeholders? How can we persuade stakeholders that they should prioritize green spaces and large trees instead of, let's say, parking spaces for cars, as you have shown?
I think you see that the cars, for example, so first answer is more transdisciplinary activities. It means we who are working in the research institutes or scientists or professors, so academic people and the practitioners like Gartenbauamt, Umweltamt, all the departments from the city of Karlsruhe or any cities, and the stakeholders, citizens and experts, civil society, they should actually meet. In our project, we created a very nice system. We call it Stadtbaum Forum. So City Tree Forum. It's a forum that happens one time a year. And we invite all kind of people and with all walk of life. So it should be more deliberative way, So, and in our university, we have a fantastic, this real labor or living lab. And so living lab or real labor is actually one nice method or principle to have this stakeholder discussion more. I am totally agree that having more park plates or not, this is a very, very conflicting opinions. So different person has different opinion. But what can I tell you is that in the former times, before the Second World War, most of the core part of the cities were very green in the past. After the Second World War, when the number of cars increased significantly, those tree plantings areas are converted to car parking area, right? So as a result, our German and European cities were basically planned in a way that human can still access to green space and park in the past. But that totally changed after the war. And that is something you also have to think about it, because otherwise cities become graying. And as you know, that I did not mention that the probability to grade schizophrenia and Parkinson disease is 70 to 80% more for people who are living in the inner part of the city compared to the rural area. So that's a huge scientific figure. So yeah.
Is to your knowledge, are your results widely known in the area where the stakeholders work, like the Gartenbau and etc.? Yeah. Do they know what you're working on? Do they know?
Yeah. So this is something I forgot to mention. Our Grüne Lunge project, from most of this presentation is coming from that project, is a project where we have stakeholder on board as a main partner from the start of the project. So the German government, BMBF, funded this project. And with the BMBF funding, we could have Grüne Lunge. In the Grüne Lunge project, we can have municipality and us together working at the same time, you know? Yeah.
All right, sounds good. I hope you find an ear for your project. It's very important, I think.
Oh, definitely. This is a very, very important area. Unfortunately, we run out of time. Somid, I just have 2 follow-up questions. So the next city tree forum, when is it? Can we participate, or can our
we plan to organize it next year summer, because normally we plan to organize in spring, summertime. That's better. So if we organize it, then maybe we should contact you. You are very welcome to join. Yeah,
of course. Yeah. And I'm also interested about the Arboretum project. We haven't talked about it.
Arboretum. Yes.
Arboretum. Yeah. We haven't talked about it much today, but I'll hope we have the opportunity sometime in Karlsruhe or at our next conference, maybe in Berlin in 6 weeks. I thank you very much for your insights. And we all, as a key takeaway, city trees play a crucial role of the health of our cities and our lives, and we need more trees. That's the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. And we know also we need more trees, and we also need trees which are good in size. Not only small, tiny trees, but more trees and large trees. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Somid. Say hi to Constanze and all the other folks at the KIT, not the MIT, but the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. Tschüss nach Baden-Württemberg. Wir sehen uns in 3 Minuten wieder mit Greentech.LIVE, und bei uns ist ein Gast nochmal, Steffen Mangerow. Er redet über Recht auf Reparatur, und der Mann hat richtig Ahnung von dem Thema. In 3 Minuten geht's weiter. Greentech.LIVE. Ich bin Jochen Siegle und ihr seid mein Publikum. Ciao.